Hi guys, I hope you are spooked and ready for the ride. The engine's soft hum was the only sound that accompanied me as I drove down the winding road, surrounded by an endless sea of darkness. The night was moonless, clouds obscuring even the faintest glimmers of stars. The only source of illumination was my car's headlights, which cut through the obsidian curtain ahead. It was a familiar route, one I had traversed countless times during daylight hours. But on this night, it felt like an entirely different world. As I navigated the twists and turns, an eerie sensation crept up my spine, an inexplicable feeling that I wasn't alone. I glanced nervously at the rearview mirror, half expecting to see another set of headlights trailing behind me. But the road stretched out in solitude, swallowed by the encompassing darkness. The radio crackled to life, breaking the silence with a burst of static. I reached out and turned the knob, trying to find a clear station, anything to distract myself from the growing unease. But no matter how much I twisted the dial, the only thing that filled the car was that incessant static. My heart quickened as a heavy fog began to roll in, clinging to the edges of the road like ghostly fingers. It seemed to seep in from all sides, shrouding the landscape and reducing visibility to mere feet. My fingers tightened around the steering wheel as I peered into the mist, my headlights piercing through the fog with feeble determination. I slowed my pace, my foot easing off the gas pedal, as an unshakable feeling of dread settled in the pit of my stomach. Every nerve in my body screamed at me to turn back, to retreat from whatever malevolent force seemed to have claimed this desolate stretch of road. But a stubborn determination kept my eyes fixed on the road ahead. I couldn't be far from the safety of town, I reasoned. Just a few more miles and this nightmarish journey would be over. Minutes stretched into eternity as the fog clung to the air like a suffocating blanket. Shapes loomed at the edge of my vision. Twisted trees, darkened silhouettes that seemed to sway and whisper secrets to one another. My pulse quickened, each beat a resounding drum in my ears. A flicker of movement caught my attention, a figure standing at the side of the road. My heart leaped into my throat as I instinctively slammed on the brakes, the car screeching to a halt. I squinted, trying to discern the nature of the apparition. It was a woman, her figure partially obscured by the fog. She wore a tattered white dress that billowed around her like a spectral shroud. My breath caught as our eyes met in the rearview mirror. They were empty, devoid of life, and yet they seemed to pierce through the glass, boring into my very soul. An icy chill ran down my spine, and I fumbled for the gear shift, desperate to put distance between myself and this haunting figure. As I sped away, a wrenching feeling of guilt tugged at me. She had appeared so lost, so vulnerable. Maybe she needed help. But every instinct screamed that this was no ordinary encounter, that something was dreadfully wrong. The road seemed to stretch on endlessly, a labyrinth of twists and turns that defied all sense of direction. Panic gripped me, my breath coming in ragged gasps as the car's headlights carved a path through the mist. And then, as if materializing from the very shadows themselves, a dilapidated building emerged in the distance. It was a desolate structure, its windows shattered and its walls weathered by time. My heart sank as I realized that I had somehow returned to the place I had been desperately trying to escape, a place that existed only in nightmares. I pulled up to the building, the engine's steady purr now a mocking laughter. My surroundings seemed to warp and contort, the building's walls stretching impossibly high, its broken windows morphing into jagged teeth. The very ground beneath me seemed to pulse with a sinister energy. With trembling hands, I turned off the engine and stepped out of the car, my footsteps echoing in the stillness. The air was thick with an otherworldly silence broken only by the distant howl of wind. I glanced back at my car, only to find it swallowed by the building's ever-shifting form. A whisper drifted through the air, carried on a ghostly breeze. It was a voice, a chorus of voices, whispering unintelligible words that seemed to worm their way into my mind. My thoughts grew muddled, reality itself becoming a fractured mosaic. And then, in the darkness, I saw them. The eyes. They surrounded me, glowing like malevolent stars, each one fixated on me with an inscrutable hunger. I was paralyzed, trapped within a nightmare not of my making. As the voices grew louder, merging into a cacophony of torment, The walls of the building seemed to close in around me. I was suffocating, drowning in a sea of shadows and despair. And then, just as suddenly as it had begun, the darkness receded. I found myself standing,